excited to see if they also made that leap and got that much better.
We are recording.
Well, hey, Miss Kelly.
Hey.
How are you sneaking in? And
Hey, Kelly, you should
I've been
belly
fighting
up
with
to
the fire
table.
marshal, state fire marshal all day, so finally got our permit so we can shoot one little box of fireworks after the tree lighting tomorrow.
Wow.
wow, that you had to go to the state fire marshal?
Yeah, state fire marshal issued me a permit. Their system is terrible. They're online, so
We're live.
been a nightmare.
So one box.
It cost me $300 to shoot one box that I got for free from Deaton.
For $300 to
Well, I
shoot
hope
it
they
off.
gave you the good box,
Yeah.
Right, not a dud.
not the little
I'm not kidding.
30-second box.
Courtney was about to have a fit if I didn't have it, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep going.
This whole new? Caleb, is this all new?
All new.
Oh, it's all, okay.
Yes.
Has anybody seen what's happening on the stocks and the cryptos lately?
The what?
Stocks and
Just as
cryptos
a-
lately?
As a
Yeah.
reminder, we are live.
Yeah.
I've got 2 council members that should be walking in any moment here.
Okay, that's fine.
So, did you see?
Yeah,
how
I
much
have
money
to take
Meta is putting
disbursement.
into-
Matter of fact, the check has apparently been mailed, so I'm gonna get it, whether I like it or not, from one of my, it's a small investment account. I mean, it's not $100,000, but anyway,
Uh-huh.
I have to take it, so,
Wow.
it's nice to be able to have it.
Was it close to
Since I'm working
water
and
or
in my age group, I can send it back if I don't wanna keep it, so that's what I've told my investment bank.
Okay.
But yeah, otherwise, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, my investments, it just lets me have quintupled, so.
Our stock at Dillard's is doing extraordinarily well as well. So,
I mean, it's kind of funny, because I'm on that Robinhood thing, it'll show you the chart, you can go back 1 month, 5 years, yeah, no, you see Trump gets elected, whoa, it's like a rocket went off.
And it's been nice making up some of the money that was, we lost.
Yeah, oh, it was terrible for me, that's why I was buying then, that's what I was waiting on, buy low when everybody else is selling, and sell high when everybody else starts buying. But yeah, now when Bitcoin hit 100,000, you did get that usual sell-off that you always get whenever something hits a big milestone like that, and it dipped a little bit, but not like I thought it would, it's already coming back up again.
right.
It's kind of exciting when those big change moments come along.
Well,
Yeah.
I asked him, does he think it's
Yeah.
partially hype that's causing it to just be, just before President Trump lost the election, or when he was at the end of his election, it got up to 39,700 and something, almost 40,000.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, that's sky high. And now we're at 43, 44,000.
Go read it.
Dow Jones. So it's like, where is that coming from?
I did? Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, one of the things Trump said, he's going to embrace crypto. He's going to make America the crypto capital of the world. Yeah.
I need to learn it then.
Yeah. Shiba, right now you buy it just dirt cheap. And it's Ethereum based.
Shiba?
Shiba Inu. And you can buy it for like 0.000032 right now. I mean, it's really cheap. And, you know, I've got 105 million of them in my pocket.
Wow.
And it
Or
wasn't that much
$40.
money.
Yeah.
A little more than $40.
$20.
But I just kept buying. Every time it would bottom out again, I said, I'll take some more. What the heck?
All right, we're going to go ahead and get going. I've got Councilmember Mazzoni said he was running a little bit late, but he messaged me 30 minutes ago saying he was on his way from the base. And Doug Shin is walking down the hallway, so I guess we'll wait another minute.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah. Just what you're looking at is a re-printout of the complete budget, rather than picking and pulling pages. So this is what it is in the system right now. Doug, this is for you, sir.
Complete change out.
The only changes that have been made since the last budget meeting was the inclusion of the extra 3% for 5 positions, and the inclusion of the salary study stuff.
Now, what was the increase for the, or for the positions?
The total dollar amount for the
Just
positions,
The percentage increase for the employees.
for those positions, an additional 3%. So the standard 3%, up to 3% merit increase plus a 3% adjustment.
So they'll be getting 6% altogether.
6% for those positions.
So, but this adjustment here is probably about 8 or 9,000, is
That is 7,300.
7,300?
Which is a drop in the bucket compared to overall budget, but we want to keep our good people. I mean, good people are worth so much more than, the money that we pay them. I mean, and you just don't want to lose them, have to train new people. Sometimes you might have to replace them with 2 or 3 people, and it ends up costing you a whole
I
lot
think
more.
also with all of these positions, really what has happened over time is, the individuals in that seat are so good at the job that their duties really have expanded.
Right.
From where it was at. And so, it's one of the reasons we really need to go back in and start looking at job descriptions, making sure those are accurate to current duties, and that whole entire process.
Are all of these in the same department, or are
No,
they
the
at
positions,
random?
the positions were the accounts payable analyst in finance, the parks office administrator, which we'll probably be looking at changing that title, next year, the fire office administrator, the,
Human resources.
HR coordinator is what it is in the system, but it has a more fancy name in practice, and chief of staff.
Are they basically new employees or
Nope.
seasoned?
Nope. They vary in time from 2 years to 20 years. But I'd say that accounts payable analyst, the parks office administrator, our HR coordinator and chief of staff position are relatively a few years in position.
Now, how does this compare with what their supervisors or administrators were requesting?
In most of the cases, it's less. It's significantly less. This was designed to be a stopover. So if you will recall, at the last budget meeting we had, individual departments were presenting their proposal, and there then became discussions about inequity between similarly situated positions in different departments, and perhaps creating some inequities. There was a recommendation that I go back and look at and make a recommendation as to how to sort of address that, since compared to what the council knows, I'm in a better position to look at, well, this is the office administrator in this department, well, here it is in the other department, let's look at it more holistically. And so I just came back with a standard 3% additional adjustment, which I don't necessarily think is enough, but that stopgap with a intent and to go through and do a full comprehensive salary study, analysis, compensation policy, and the like. I think those go hand in hand.
All right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, as somebody who's been an employer for like 40 years, and I was always in the supervisory capacity before that, you don't want to lose your really good people. And, when you consider that, okay, if a 3% is gonna be about a $7,300 increase in the budget, a 5% would then be maybe about $12,000. Pennies, just nothing, not even a fraction of a percent as far as the city budget. But to the employees, I think it would be huge, and a great motivator to keep them until next year. I think this next year coming up, all the indicators that we're probably gonna have a good year. I mean, we don't wanna write checks that we can't cash, so we're not gonna count any chickens before the eggs hatch, but, to use enough cliches there. But the point is that we've got to keep our good people, and for just a tiny bit more, I think we could go a long way to maintaining and keeping those top quality employees. Because if we had to replace them, it's gonna cost us way, way more.
Well, are they hourly wages, or is it a monthly salary? I mean, are all 4 of them the same thing?
I don't know off the top of my head. So, some of them are hourly, but it all washes out. So all of these are employees that work 40 to 40 plus hours.
But they're not new employees, they've been here for a long time.
Right, yeah, these are
So
dedicated
we can't
people.
afford to start all over again.
Right,
with
because
new
you lose
employees.
so much skill, so much knowledge, and, plus too, I think it sends a good, message to everybody else, like, hey, if you try harder, you're gonna get rewarded for it. They'll
Right.
recognize it.
We, in the past, are normally, compare or look at other cities, what other cities do for comparable employees. Have we sort of done that here, or?
So one of the difficulties is going back to the idea of a job description, right? You can look at a particular job and the duties in it, and then we match it to the closest job description, compare it to comparator cities. But the jobs are not always the same. They're not, it's because we're basing it off of job titles. So then you look at the job duties and try and mesh those up. A good example, though not at all what we're considering, would be the position of the city clerk treasurer. It's a good position to compare because the things that the city clerk treasurer does in Maumelle are not at all similar to the things that city clerks treasurers do in most every other city. And that's because we just set that by ordinance or by rule. In the departments, we just set it by that person's job duty. We also have a little bit of difficulty comparing, for example, you could take the HR coordinator position. When you're comparing that to a position in Little Rock or North Little Rock, those departments are so big that that person is one of 20 people that are doing similar job duties, and they tend to be more focused on specifics versus what is the idea of a generalist who has to be good at everything. Well, they're still in that same job title, right? And so it becomes very difficult to simply pull up the Arkansas Municipal League's pay scale and go, okay, this is a good comparator. But we have looked at those things to see roughly where they fit on it. Really what we need to do, in my opinion, if we're trying to put together a compensation package is do this wholesale thing, get away from, by and large, this idea of individual departments coming in and requesting pay increases for odds and ends, but rather look at it proactively. We used to do this, but then we started targeting specifics because we were in budget crunches in some years, but we had certain positions that just remained unfilled, or we just had such a high turnover that we were looking to push money. So the bigger issue to me, I think the 3% for these positions is what I'm recommending. The bigger thing for me is coming up with this wholesale sort of salary study, and getting on board with the software so that we can keep this stuff up to date on our own.
If the supervisor or the head of the department is proportionately in line with other cities, Little Rock, Conway, whoever, then it would seem like that their subordinates would be, again, along that same line. You said there's only 4, maybe 2 of them are hourly and 2 of them are salaried, period. That's difficult to, how do you go about bringing that hourly? When they get their paycheck, is their paycheck about the same or as payroll, monthly payroll?
So all of the positions we're talking about that are hourly are paid 40 hours a week. They work 40 hours a week. If they work more than that, they're either paid comp time or they get overtime. We don't have any people, so the designation between salary and hourly is really more to deal with whether that person is eligible for overtime. So whether they're exempt from those provisions or not is really where it kicks in. Does that make sense? So it's more a legal designation than it is affecting the way they're paid, because the system is built such that a overtime person or a salaried individual is actually paid just regularly for 40 hours. So it's in our system the same way. It's just whether they're eligible for overtime or not.
Is there such a thing as a standard minimum wage in, I don't know anything about the personnel or that area as to, in other words, should everybody be earning $10 an hour, or should they all be earning $1,400 a month, or is there a standard that says anything below this is level income?
Well, the state has minimum wage laws.
I'm sure I'm asking the question right. But
Yeah.
I'm not understanding the question.
okay,
sorry.
well, it's pretty confusing. I understand. How do you? We're talking about increasing their level. If we increase it 3%, is that going to meet a state standard for 40-hour week income? I guess would that make sense?
No, there's not like this is not aimed at a livable wage or something like that. The pay raises and increases that we gave last year were the pay increases that were targeted on the lowest paid individuals, right? And so we effectively put an informal citywide minimum wage in of, I believe, $13 an hour. There's still, I think, some rec aides and lifeguards that work at the community center that don't adhere to that. But so last year's focus for compensation was to take those lowest paid and increase that bottom. What we don't have is I don't have a pay scale that represents the city's policy for starting wages for accountant one and represents the midpoint range for accountant one, and then shows me what an accountant one caps out at, right? We don't have that policy in place. So one of the reasons for the compensation study is I have some positions that are probably significantly over what their peers make, but continue to receive up to a 3% merit increase each year, because there's no cap on any of those. We don't have any longer a pay policy that states what particular positions get paid. The incumbent or the new person coming in to fill a vacancy basically gets the salary that the other person did, unless there's multiple people in the same position. Then we just it's all done on a case-by-case basis.
Okay,
and so we've lost uniformity over the years.
Can we use a mathematical or numbers answer to it then? Whatever their X number of income is, without identifying who and what department, and if you add 3% to that, what does that bring that salary of that person up to at this point? If we increase
Would be
it
3%
that way?
higher.
Yes, sir.
Right now, we're talking about
Did I say
7,300
that
for
right?
all of them put together.
Right now, for the positions that I've recommended, the 3%, that annual cost right now will cost a total of $7,300, a little bit less. I rounded up to 73.
And I'm at,
Divide that by 4, is that what you're doing?
No, because they're all paid different amounts. So,
That's
for
the
example,
We're talking about
the
$7,300.
HR coordinator position, that 3% amounts to just around 1,000, whereas the fire office administrator, that comes in at 1,500.
Okay.
So I think you're asking the right questions in terms of policies and what is the plan and how does this adjust. That's the stuff that we don't have. I can go in for any individual person and do the math on that, but it doesn't fit into a comprehensive pay policy or pay scale or pay grades, the likes that it used to.
I'll yield for somebody else.
Yeah, just finished, RJ.
Well, we're all done now. Thank you, RJ, for making it.
Well, I think, Mayor Norris, you've dealt with some really difficult situations these last few years. We've had economies crashing, our income flatline, while expenses on everything have gone up. You know, I understand why you're kind of pulling for just the 3, but I still admit, I'm advocating for that 5%, because it's only another $5,000, and I think it would just make a huge impact to the people involved, because we really want to reward our good people. So that's where I'm coming from. How does everybody else feel about that?
Salary study is.
I like the idea of a salary study, though. I like the idea, you know, we don't know what we don't know. And,
Yeah, still go ahead and do that, for
if
sure.
we're gonna be data-driven somehow, we need to know where we're lacking. Like you said, there may be some that are over, that's fine. I don't hate that. But there may be some people who are grossly underpaid.
Right, that's what I'm worried about.
Is anyone gonna stand out by being ridiculously overpaid?
We'll see. I have, well, and some of them are not, some of them are not, I don't wanna say anyone, I don't know of anyone who I think is grossly overpaid for the work that they're
Well,
doing.
like, when you've got all these people making 45 to 50, and all of a sudden this person's making 65, that would stand out.
If we're talking
But
about
if we're not
in
a
the
situation-
department, if we're
Yeah.
talking about in a department, those people who are here the longest, if they're just compounding 3% every year, that position goes
Well,
up.
I understand, because that's how it is at the public school.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, unless you have somebody that is suspicious.
I think if we don't put a cap on some positions in a few years, it's gonna look a little bit suspicious.
So we have caps.
So, we don't have that at this point.
So you mentioned the cost of a salary study the
Yeah.
other night, or have you mentioned it today?
Yeah, I haven't mentioned it today. It's built into the budget, and it is, it comes to about up to 3,400 or 34,000 for the consulting part, and then the software part is about 6,000 a year.
It's not the same sanitation folks doing the
No,
study.
absolutely not.
No
This is,
PMI.
and so just a reminder, normally when we hire a consultant, we go out.
Just
and
making
no,
sure.
I will, absolutely not. That is a good example of what we don't want. We really only went to the company that the city has used before, for the software services, and that the Arkansas Municipal League uses for their salary survey. And we contacted them and we asked what would it cost to do certain things, and what is the software that would be used on a reoccurring basis. So that was only the first place we talked to, right? But I now know that this is going to be the ceiling price for what we're wanting. We'll obviously continue to go out and see what other, just like we would anything else, where you're looking to see what the options are out there. But just due to the short time frame that we had.
So this is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna ask, is the computer system affiliated with the consultant? In other words, is it a product that he sells?
It used to be. It used to be, now they're two, they went through this whole history in the webinar. It used to be the same, now I think they're owned by the same parent company, but they're different branches, because there's some people who want the software but not the consulting, and some people who want the consulting but don't need the software as a service. The reality is, if you were to give me 2 people for a year, I might be able to not need the consultant. I am a little bit gun shy after the onboarding with UKG, the payroll software. I think we have a stellar HR crew right now, but I don't think they have the bandwidth to implement and initiate a new software system in-house. I think we need somebody who can come in and help us set it up, who can put all the time into doing a lot of this stuff that, quite frankly, I think is well within the capabilities of Doreen, but not within her ability to get that work done without sacrificing other things that she needs to do.
So what do we get specifically from the software?
From the software, thought no one would ever ask. We could kind of pass this on. We built it out right now for 2 modules. They offer 3. We're still flexible on that because we haven't figured them out. They have a job builder software, which allows us to standardize some of the job descriptions. And then there's the grade builder, which is the job valuation module, and then the market builder, which is the competitive market analysis. To standardize the job descriptions, to give values, some of this stuff that I'm saying is going to sound foreign to some of y'all, and some of it's going to sound so basic that you thought that we probably already did that. But in order to give a point value to a particular category in a job description, those all need to be standardized, right? And so if we're going to say we're going to award 5 points for this particular, we're going to award 5 points based on the educational requirements, I need to make sure, that's a bad one because it's easy, there's clearly delineated lines, high school, college, specialty degree, X amount of time in service. You have to build those into the job description and make sure that all of the 68 different non-uniform job titles are operating under that sort of matrix. So that's what the job builder does. The grade builder deals more with the valuation of that. That is the part where you can log in and say, hey, this person's job duties change. We're going to quickly change the job description this year, and we're also going to change the valuation of that there as well. The market builder is more of the analysis side, comparing what we've marketed to toward the civilian side. So
I've got a couple questions
absolutely.
on this, and only because we've fairly recently done a salary study at my organization. Did they tell you how many sample organizations that they would look at?
For what purposes? For the comparator?
Yeah.
They did. Yes, there was 3. The big one was the Arkansas Municipal League salary survey and 2 others.
We already have access to the Municipal League, correct?
Correct.
So why would they use that one then?
Why would they? Because it's relevant?
But it's free to us though, but we're paying 30. You see what I'm saying? Why wouldn't they choose samples that we don't already have access to?
Well, there's 2 others that we can do, and then we can we can pay for a custom salary survey where we customize a survey. It's not built into any of these costs, because it's $50 per title, at 68 titles. But it then sends out a survey to 8 to 10 comparators that we have worked with them on to establish and set up. So that's certainly an option.
So we only paid. It's certainly a smaller number of employees. What's the total number of employees we have?
Well, it's by title.
Title only?
It's by title only,
177.
and we're looking at 68 titles. And then the software is booked on a flat fee for up to 100 titles. The consultant is on a per title basis.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm done.
Am I correct that you're kind of leaning towards this particular consultant because?
No.
Okay.
I'm not particularly leaning toward a consultant. Whenever you want to get a price for anything, especially when you're meeting, when we're done and then have a 3-day work week and you're trying to set up Zoom calls, no one will just give you a flat price, right? They all want to give you a product demonstration and this and then this, that, and the other, assess your needs, and then the price, and then negotiation, which we haven't even done. I went onto Google and picked one of the top ones there that also, as I was like, I recognize this name because they do the Arkansas Municipal League salary survey, hopped on LinkedIn, looked at that company, recognized some names that I've heard of through there. So I'm not even necessarily pushing for this particular consultant. I was trying to get a dollar amount that I could present to the city council. This seems to be like a good ceiling amount. This was their proposal. We haven't gone back through and nickeled and dimed them and asked them, like, this seems like a high price for this particular cert. We haven't even gone through that. I just tried to get that budget number in.
You
have to exclude the police and the fire team because they already have their tables.
Oh, so
salary
no
tables,
fire, no
uh-huh.
police, so then that's not included in the 68 titles?
Correct.
You've already subtracted that.
For them, we already have a table and they go different. The idea that I really had, that is the result. They have levels and they have a salary range.
They've got their own schedules,
Yeah, both of them, fire and police.
And we used to have a pay grade for non-uniform employees also. I mean, technically it still exists, but I think it has people making $7 an hour or something. So, I mean, it's no longer relevant.
Is this $7,300 coming out of the general fund balance, or is it coming out of some of the?
In general.
All of
General
these
fund.
positions are general fund.
Yes, 101.
So to clarify, we've got, the study is in the budget that we have now. The, adding the extra position for Mr. Grimmer as Director of Planning and Permits
Oh, there's a lot, yeah.
is in there. Basically, what we're talking about right now is the 3% on the 4 employees.
Well, there's 5.
Or there's 5 then, which I'm
So the
advocating 5%
only
on the
numbers
5.
that have not been sort of, requests that the council has not agreed on, right? So there were things like, hey, yes, y'all need to go in and put the overtime for police, for the courts. The only things that at the end of the last meeting were spoken to me to be unresolved were a come back with a plan for these positions. So in the budget that isn't stuff, and we can go through some of the stuff that have been added that you all have told us to add prior. The only things that were not sort of agreed upon were the salaries, and then I built in the recommended compensation classification market study analysis.
So that's the only thing we're really talking about right now.
It's the council's meeting. We'll talk about whatever you want
I
to.
mean, how many of you want to stay at the 3%, or how many would want to consider the 5% for these 5 people?
I'd say 3%, and then let's see what the salary study brings us.
Of course, I'm hoping we still have them a year from now.
I would-
This won't take effect till next year.
You know, when we sat in here a month or so ago, we were going back and forth, and I felt like we were wading way off into the weeds, trying to adjust different positions, different amounts, and I really don't like us interfering with that to some degree, because I think we can get out of whack in certain areas, and so we asked the mayor to look at this. Personally, I'm comfortable with the 3%, just because City Hall knows what's going on with the staff, and we don't necessarily. Everybody would love more money, but
Yeah, I think department heads have asked for like 9%. So what we're only giving them is like a third of what they're asking.
well,
Well, it's probably 2/3, because I think those that asked for 9 were asking for 3 plus 6.
Okay.
So they're getting 3 plus 3.
3 plus 6.
And that was designed because I went with what I thought was a conservative number that could show employees that we were interested in doing the things we could to retain them, but I went with a conservative number because the concerns spoken by the council at that time was there were discussions about, are we now lopsiding things such that maybe there's a department head who has a stellar employee that they didn't bring forward because there was no discussion. There was no one coming to them saying, hey, if you have anyone that you think needs to be specially compensated, bring that to us. So the idea was to not tip the boat too much. I'm not opposed to higher numbers. I'm just explaining why I came back with just kind of a flat conservative number, not to mention the fact that revenues were not up, right? We're not looking at more money for next year and trying to figure out how we could spend that wisely.
So yeah, so it's a choice of 7,300 or 12,000.
It's, yeah.
Exactly.
Neither of which will bankrupt the city.
Right.
Today.
I'm an advocate for the 12, but
Well, I just think the salary study will make things fair. And it'll be something, it's not just arbitrary.
It would give us justification.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think I would rather, like I said, go with the 3% and then see what the salary study tells us to do. Or what it recommends.
So So I guess kind of being discussed and presented, and I'll just, there seems to be a discussion for 3% or 5%, and there may be someone who's saying 0%, but do we wanna proceed with 3%, 5%, raise your hand if you like the idea of the 3%? Raise your hand if you like the idea of the 5%.
I guess I'm the only one
Okay, so we'll
pitching for the
stick
employees.
it then with the 3% and then the remaining,
Split the difference.
Okay, I'd compromise.
okay, well, my attempts at coming to so now we have 3%, 4%, and 5%. But we've ruled out 5%. And then the question is over the salary study, if that's something that y'all see value in, and should keep, for the moment, let's just talk about that.
No, I'm all for doing the salary study, yeah.
Is there anyone who thinks not?
I think it's certainly worth doing, but is it going to be one of those things that we do and then
Just
we're
ignore
not
Put it on the
happy
shelf.
with the results because it may show us some,
We may
it
not
may
like,
show
Some
us,
blood.
yeah.
we may not like what we find out.
Right, and so I think it's worth doing, yes, but we may not like the results, and that's gonna cause us to have some heartache next year.
So we could get some of the same results without the need for the software. The consultant fees would go up a little bit, but then we have a one-time delivered product, whereas the consultant working with us and the software allows us to at least have software that we can modify. We have personnel who know the heck how the scores were there. We've built out an objective system. We think that then on an annual, we just can keep this on a rolling basis updated. I do think we're gonna, there are those sorts of questions that I have about ending up with a product that we're like, oh great, now what? Yeah, I mean, so that's part of it. But so I guess then on the floor, for the moment is the discussion about that. Is there anyone who thinks we shouldn't go forward with this?
I think the salary study is definitely needed. I'm not sold on the software. And to Chad's point, I've been in organizations where you do a salary study, you pay 20, 30,000, and then as an organization, they found out that technically we were all within range of all of the job positions, but we were at the very lowest end possible. But the organization was okay with that. And so, to Chad's point, I think we just need to be mindful of that going in. But I'm not sold on the software yet.
So what I can't do is just pull the software out of the price. We can increase the consulting fees some and decrease the software. One of the problems I did have with the software is it delivers a result once a year. Come budget time, when we're looking at things, you pull up the system, you look at stuff, and then that's it. The rest of the year, the only thing you're doing is updating bits and pieces so that you don't have to do it all at once at the end of the year.
You don't like that?
You're paying $6,000 a year for something that you're using
Once a year.
Now, the question is whether that is of value to pay $6,000 a year to be able to look at everything and go, hey, we've changed the job descriptions this year. This person that wasn't a supervisor has actual supervising duties of these two people. How is that affecting that job title? Oh, look, it bumps it up a grade. And now it's, instead of a grade 7 job, it's a grade 6 job.
$800 a head.
There'll be a few things like that.
Title?
What's that?
It's about $800 per job title to maintain that software.
So say we get into this
because
thing,
there's 68 job titles.
Yeah.
So it's,
say we get
Said
into this
6,000.
thing, we decide we don't wanna do
oh,
it,
yeah.
how easy an exit do we have?
It's just a year contract.
1 year time, so if
So,
we don't like it, we can always
$6,000,
just drop
and
it.
if it's like, it ain't worth it,
Then we waste it.
then we're not, $6,000's not gonna.
Yeah.
So we can then make a
Update
more
run.
informed assessment, do you get 6,000 worth of something? So I was worried with you that we're committing for years for
It's just for a
something
year,
that we
right?
go, yay,
Yeah, no,
hey.
it's just I mean, That was my understanding, cause I mentioned the same thing, to them. And again, I only talked to them for 2 hours with Doreen and Vivian on the call, and I got a 6-page PowerPoint presentation delivered, and
I'm
haven't followed up
comfortable
with
with
anybody.
you putting it in the budget, because you're still gonna negotiate it and figure out if you even wanna do it. If you don't wanna do it and you figure some things change, okay, it changes. So we're not locking into anything by just putting a number in a budget.
Yeah.
I thought we were committing to do it.
We're appropriating money for it, but if he spends it or not,
He may not go with this program, he may go with
Yeah.
another one.
In other words, he hadn't had time to study it to know for dang sure he really wants it.
Which plan he
Well,
wants.
I know we wanna do something, I'm not sure if it's this company, I'm not sure if it's this software, we haven't done due diligence, I wouldn't purchase this at this point based on the amount of due diligence I did, but I have to have a budget number, because what the council's approving is the money to go forward.
Starting point.
How long of a period of time does it take for you to be able to know what you have to know, and then come back and report to the council what you know, so that we can,
About everything? No,
well, whatever you can deal with in that framework.
Not very long.
So when's the next meeting?
I can't do due diligence enough to compare things. I can't get a price on anything probably for 5 days, cause I'm not gonna be able to get, no one just sends out prices. They wanna meet with you and find out your needs and
Probably
custom
January.
tailor their presentation, and that takes a week just to get on someone's calendar.
Oh,
So I'm not in time for budget, not in time for December 16th.
oh, okay.
Probably a January type of thing.
Well, I mean, when we hit January, then we've got all this stuff we've been talking about that gets implemented. So, one of my goals would be to keep this project in the mayor's office and work with HR, as opposed to just dropping the bucket on them and saying, let's go for it. But, so it sounds like then, we're good with that
Putting that in the
remaining
budget.
in the budget, and then, that would mean that this budget then looks the way that we've addressed everything that the council has said should be in the budget is.
And I couldn't find what the amount of money is we have above. the
Fund balance,
required-
go to-
I added,
Yeah.
I added this time in the package I gave to you.
Last pages.
I convinced the mayor to present to you the fund balances for all the funds that we have in the city. And I also
Just the general
opened,
funds, all I'm interested
It's
Is
on,
that the
it's
end?
one of the last couple
the
pages.
last page,
on this thing?
yes.
Yeah, that new batch,
The
that
last
new page
page.
there.
The last page, it says fund balances,
Okay.
and it's all the money that we have in the city from 2022 to our budget of 2025. And if I in cash balances, that includes banks and the money that we have in regions for the bonds, things like that. And then in the next row is the investment, 2 million. We have some receivables every year because it's the money that we collect the beginning of the following year. And the fixed assets just represent the sanitation funds, okay? And in the bottom, then you have the payables and the fund balance. The fund balance is composed for 3 main lines. The designated fund balance means whatever is committed to be paid, like purchase orders that we have to pay the following year. The fund balance is the fund balance that represent all the like equity that the company city has, and each year we have a result. In 22 we have a loss of 3 million. Then in 23, then you go every year like that. What we project for 25? In 25 we project to have a fund balance of $16 million with 13 million in cash, 2 million in investments, around 550,000 in fixed assets for the sanitation, and in general, with expenditures for all the funds that we have for 6.7 million. So I think this this analysis is what you were asking me for, and I don't know if it is clear for everybody.
Does that include all the encumbered and everything?
Yes.
That is the designated fund balance. Okay, so what isn't in this page right now is not today's fund balance or fund cash, which would be best represented by the last financial statement review, which will show the fund balance. What this is showing is in the general fund, your designated fund balance. So does everyone have this page that says fund balances and then designated fund balance?
I'm sorry, I'm not finding it.
It is.
101, and then in the total, here is the total.
It's the very last one.
There's the last couple pages. So this is the fund balance for.
And it's by funds. Fund 101,
Yeah.
Fund 102, I put all
We
of
want
them.
101 general
And
fund.
at the end, the summary of all the
The
funds,
general
in
fund.
order you have
Fund
the
balance.
whole picture
Is
of
anyone
it.
else looking for it and hasn't found it?
This, right?
What-
Okay,
what's
so-
our- Yeah, what's our cash fund balance in the general fund right now?
General fund, go
Right
to
now.
the first page, Fund 101. We have 6 million at the end of 2020 for the 2024
Well, this doesn't
budget.
show, so on the cash, we're 2024 balance year to date. Right in the middle. Right, your balance year to date,
This one.
yes, but this column for the
Yes.
2024 balance year to
Yes.
date
Yes,
is
yes,
where
yes,
we're
yes.
at today.
We are
It's
up to date.
It's 72.95?
Yes,
Okay, now some of that is required that we have to hang on to, right?
so it's more than 72.95, it's 72.95 in cash checking banks. We then have 1.2 million that are in things like CDs and very liquid
Cash.
cash, basically.
High interest.
And then the receivables,
Actually, this is for the sanitation.
for the sanitation fund, okay. So then basically the total assets, and in general fund, we're really just looking at cash and CDs in terms of investments, is 8.6.
8.6.
8.691 as of a day or two ago, whatever the.
That's the general funds only.
Okay, all right, now we've got some things where we're coming down the pike here where we're gonna have, and how much of that 8 million is by law we have to have?
Well, the ordinance 438, what is that number?
20% or 20% of the operational expenditures budget. So here, how much is this? The 20
Basically trying to
operational
figure out how much.
expenditure, 19 times. Let me see. So it's 19,448,613. Is that operating expenditures year to date in 24 is 19,448,613. This one times 20% is 3.8 million. So we cannot spend 3.8 million because it's the fund that we always have to.
What does the fund balance look like?
Times 20%. We have to.
Or are we gonna be left?
Well, but I was doing, so, but if we go back to, cause one of my big questions, we go back to the general fund summary on that,
Yes.
the first page. If we look at the 2020, 2.3 million difference, I know part of that's going to be upwards on the 1.3 that we're looking to update. So, but that's still a lot of money. Is that encumbered? Is that what? That's a big chunk.
All the money that is encumbered and on POs shows up in the designated fund balance line item.
Okay.
The big chunk that is expected to be spent that is not already encumbered is the 1.3 million for Gateway Park. And that won't show up because it's not on a PO yet.
Right. So that's still a 1 million difference in budgeted capital versus expended.
And we'd have to go through and figure that out, which we can do, but I don't know how to.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
that there's
can
any
do
report.
it, but it's,
Another item,
That's significant.
another item will be this police and fire thing, it hadn't been paid for, right?
The training facility,
Yeah,
yes, but we're not talking about general fund monies at this time. Because we took 3.1 million out of the general fund and put it in the, capital improvement fund already. So $3.1 million for that facility has already been removed from the general fund. And the whole idea is so that we're not doing the sorts of, we want to pull that money out so we stop thinking about it as money that we can spend, because we've already kind of designated it.
Exactly right. That's what I'm trying to look at here, is what big numbers are we gonna suddenly say, oh, we've got,
Well,
we're gonna do this, but we haven't, and.
So here's
it's gonna
the big
pop up
number.
Mid-year or something.
Here's the big number that isn't included in this, and that's Gateway Park. We have 1.3 million, actually 1.28, or 1.25 million that is not on a PO, that has been appropriated. And then, of course, we're talking about at the next city council meeting, basically increasing that by $1 million.
Okay.
Right, that's the proposal. So you're effectively looking at whatever 2.3 or 2.4 million that's on the table right now that is not accounted for because it's not been approved fully.
Okay. And then what about the, Club Manor improvements, changing the road?
That won't be street fund, or that won't be general fund, that's in street fund, and amusingly, we're transferring money back from for this year, we had not a full grant. We applied, the project cost went up, but we got another grant. So we actually, the money that we took out of the street fund and put into the grant fund, we're returning some of that money back to the street fund.
Okay.
Which is cool, because the project went up in price, but we're taking money out of that, our money out of that account.
So the only thing we're looking at is this Gateway Park thing, and right now we've got $4.7 million that's not in the required, and that'll reduce that to 2.3. And so that's all you got left after this calendar year. So I mean, if we go in the hole again next year by 2.4 or 2.5.
Well, and so I'm actually, I don't think the number is quite that high. We'll have to go through and look, because we had significant expenses that count as an operational cost to the general fund that really is just a transfer of money from the general fund to a savings account. And so, for example, when we transferred $3 million from the general fund to the capital improvement fund for the future purchase of a vehicle, I don't think that counts as like an actual expense, right?
No,
Like, I mean,
have the cash here in this one.
correct. So the cash is there, but when we're looking at 438 ordinance 438 requirements, it's a certain amount of our operational, a certain amount of our expenses each year need to be reserved, 20% of what we're spending. But it's also a little bit incorrect to say that we spent $3 million from the general fund when we just transferred it from our checking account to our savings account. So I think that number, when we really kind of get down to brass tacks, would be less than the 4 point. But yeah, you're saying the same thing that Councilmember Mazzoni is saying.
I'm just worried if we.
So was it so I think we want to get the 2024 budget. The biggest expense that might be close was the police vehicle, 6 vehicles. Did we get those? Were those expense? We're still.
The 2 million?
We had, so for 2024, we had $324,000 for new vehicles. So I'm trying to see, there's still about $500,000 difference. Did we get those vehicles? Were they expensed? Or are they still?
For the
Let me
police-
grab my
For the
budget.
police department. We are in 1.4 million? Yeah.
A big chunk of the capital is some of the PSAP money, the fire station alerting. I can speak to, that was supposed to be 200,000 that we had to buy to give to North Little Rock as part of the consolidation. We cut the check today and it's about 80,000, not the 200,000, but they might have used some of that other stuff. But I after a conversation with Chief Buford, I know we were thinking that we'd be about 100,000 to the good, that we appropriated more. He was able to save about 100,000 there, which he wanted me to remind you would cover his new recommended employee for a year or two worth of salary based on that. And so I told him I may bring it up, but I have now brought it up. The police department, I can't, surely they would have bought their cars. They're normally looking at stuff come January.
They bought those before we left out budget meeting.
I know, prior years we had trouble with delivery, so it was like, was it?
Well, I don't think they're, renting cars anymore, are they? I think they're
We
buying
still
them outright.
have leases.
But the new ones
You're
are
still
purchased.
leasing cars?
Yeah. A lot of their unmarked cars, so their detective cars and the like are leased. I don't think they're leasing patrol vehicles. So they're leasing some of their detective vehicles and their undercover vehicles.
So what was the amended, because the adopted was at 26, 25 here.
For what?
The amend.
What page are you looking at?
So the general fund summary.
Yes.
The 26, 25 matches obviously what we approved 2024. 26, 25, then it jumped up to 3.6. Do you remember what that 1 million extra capital was?
We in capital there was a lot of that was so remember, if it's on a PO, it automatically carries over. So for example, as soon as I put the Gateway Park on a PO for 2 point whatever million dollars it's going to be, or if the council approves it, then the budget you adopt on today includes January 1, or once we make those PO transfers, everything that's already committed will amend the budget.
So that could have been something from the 2023.
It could have been that. Let's not forget, I'm not sure how much of that was capital, but we had a lot of that insurance money. I don't know if that insurance money that we got, that went into operational.
Now, Gateway Park was on the 2023, but it was also, that was also in that.
It was in the 24 as well,
also in
because it wasn't committed or appropriated.
So that wouldn't have been it.
Correct.
Pickleball courts.
There you go.
That's what it was. And that's all, is that all?
That project's done, yep.
And all that's,
Well done.
all that expended, so the only, so that would make up for that. So really,
So
it's the the only thing outlying, make sure, for capital expenses, is the 1.3 million for the Gateway Park, which we've got the resolution to increase. So is everything else that we know of?
So here's the beauty of this report. If that money is available to be spent, if it's above $1,000, it gets put on a PO, and that PO encumbers the money, and this report automatically shows it as designated. So we can go through, like I'd have to go through each item, and we can do that.
So that
But
we
every item that a department has agreed to pay and put on a PO before they've ordered it is already showing up in
Yes,
here.
it's the 1.6 million that we have here.
So but he's
So-
talking about, so I
Yeah,
know
so
of
if we
about
go back to
100.
that general fund, that, so the 1.3 for Gateway Park is considered expense out
It's
of-
not, no, it's not considered designated.
Okay.
That plus, because it's not on a PO.
Okay.
We enter a PO as soon as we commit to purchase it, right? And so I haven't committed to build the park because the invoice came in higher. That's the only thing that I'm aware of without going through and looking that is
Okay.
supposed to come out of capital that hasn't already been put on a PO. But,
So let me make,
Yep.
well, summarize, think if I got it. So if we look at the fund balances, 104 that we were talking about earlier, page, where
I
we
can
got
actually look these up.
7.3 million. So right now, we went and cashed out everything in our account, we'd have 7.3 million cash sitting here. We went to the CDs and all that, we'd had an extra 1.3 million of cash sitting here. And then 136,000 of bills coming in, the receivables. And then, so all our capital expenses appear to be expensed with the exception of the gateway. So we would have to subtract that 1.3 from that basically 10 mil to account for that. Am I tracking right?
Yeah, I tell you what I can do.
Keep on hand, can you do that?
What's that?
The
This
1.6
amount we gotta
is
keep
not
on
here.
hand.
If they
I haven't
don't
added
pay,
that in yet, no.
Okay.
it reduces your cash automatically. If these are paid, whenever they are paid, they will reduce the cash.
Yeah.
And the cash is almost 8.5
Hang on. My gosh, folks.
I wondered where they were.
Yeah,
I thought it was your pride.
it is my pride.
That goes
Okay,
fast,
so I
don't
can,
worry.
here's what I can do.
You'll get over it.
If you give
Get
me,
these in every vehicle, every room.
He wants to copy me.
what is the best way to look up?
What do you want to do?
If I'm trying to look at how much of this line item is here, I'm going 491. So if you guys have, just going down, if you're looking at the budget from last year, and I don't mind going through this,
All the capital has been,
I'd have to talk to the department heads. I will tell you,
Okay.
by this point in time,
You
if they're
think so?
planning on spending things, it's usually been spent at this point in time, or on a PO, because
yeah,
what
so
we'd be saying is,
if we came in under budget, then great.
the signs seem to be there, but I'm still getting a tapering of POs being entered, and it's not unlike a department to panic, get something